Let me just let the folks in. Uh, where are they? This interface is different.
I came back on a different machine, Kathy.
Okay. Okay, let me see if I can just and then did you want me to queue up the video?
I'm okay, I can see you.
No, the video that we want to watch.
Oh,
We're going to watch that video?
Yeah,
Well,
wait,
let me just finish
don't
the
start it yet.
Yeah.
introduction of the introduction. Yeah. Okay. So the video record reflect that this is Saturday, November 15th, duly noticed meeting of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers of Nantucket. We established that we have a quorum. 10 of our 15 members are online at this point. And the agenda has been approved, and the minutes of the last meeting have also been approved, and we're just starting into our program for the day, which is to discussion of the housing situation on Nantucket. And it's going to be led by Gene Briskman and Steve Perlman with our guests presenting. This has been a subject, the housing, or maybe better to say, the lack of sufficient amounts of both affordable and attainable housing on Nantucket has been the subject that we have, looked at over, I think, all of the years that I've been on this committee, and that's a large number of years at this point, certainly more than 5. And I think there's been progress, but there's still so much to do. And I'm very, very eager to hear more about it this morning. So thank you. Gene, would you do the honors?
Thank you, Peter. Just as a little background, as Peter said, the committee has been interested in and paying attention to the issues of affordable housing on Nantucket for quite some time. But I think the recent documentary, Room for Us, that was produced last winter and was began showing in at the Dreamland in late summer, or early, I think it was maybe in September, that really caught my attention, and I think caught most of our attentions regarding the impact of the affordable housing crisis on the individuals who suffer from it or suffer because of it. And it was really, after I saw it, which was the first time it was shown at the Dreamland, I sent a notice out to the rest of the committee suggesting we all try to see it when it was aired on the Dreamland for a week, sometime I think in late September. And I know a number of you did see it, but I thought it would be interesting to bring together some of the folks who are actively involved in dealing with that issue to build upon the information provided through the documentary. And thanks to, and turned out Steve Perlman and his wife saw the film when it first, after it was started showing again at the Dreamland, and they got in touch with Dylan, who is the deputy housing director, and from there we were in touch with Brian Sully. I don't know which you prefer to go by, and Anne, and got them involved. So thanks, Steve, and thanks, Abby, as well. And just to introduce what we're going to do is we're going to show the 2-minute trailer of the video for those of the film for those who haven't seen it, and it in just 2 minutes sort of tells the story in real life terms that are really meaningful and important for us all to experience. And then we'll have our three guests, and I think they've prepared some talking points, and let them take over. And just so you know, Ann Cusper is the executive director of Housing Nantucket, which is an organization, privately funded organization that provides affordable housing, mostly in the form of rental units, with, I guess, well over 60 rental units now under their care. Brian Sullivan, who I guess prefers going by the term Sully, which I think goes back to his days in high school, because I have some friends whose daughters were friendly with Sully back in Weston. And he's the co-founder and principal broker of Fisher Real Estate Company here on the island, and is the chairman of the Affordable Housing Trust, which I guess is a town organized agency provided for the creation and preservation of affordable housing on Nantucket. And I believe its funds come largely through the Nantucket town budget. And Dylan Metch-Ample is the deputy housing director for the town of Nantucket. And among the responsibility of that office is to manage the various town-owned rental properties, such as Academy Hill and Landmark House, and they're also involved in affordable housing. So what we will do first is put on the video, the 2-minute video, and then let our three guests take over. Thank you, and thanks to the three of them for appearing with us today.
Well, I have this picture of Nantucket as an extremely wealthy island. There's a lot of wealthy property, but the majority of the population is skimping by.
You drive down the street in the winter and you look at all these empty places that somebody could be living in.
Trabajo yo tengo, gracias a Dios. Por mí no hay problema encontrar un cuarto, poderlo pagar. El problema es que no hay.
It's really sad, especially if you grew up here and you have to be told that you can't live here.
You internalize how difficult it is to build a life.
We definitely lose students, friends, everybody. We decided that while we lived in a 1-bedroom basement apartment, we did not want to grow our family. We bring in about 180 to 190,000 combined.
Nantucket is at a very intense inflection point. The year-round community gets to make its choice whether we are going to be a seasonal resort community that imports and exports workers, or we're going to be a year-round community that people live and send their kids to school and raise multiple generations of families. And this is not going to be by a vote. It's going to be by action.
Because everybody deserves a home.
I feel like Nantucket is just America magnified. It's like the super wealthy and the kind of super poor.
Having a viable, healthy, complete community is in all of our interests.
So as far as having room for us, we're here.
Okay, we're back.
Dylan, I'll start real quick. Gene, thank you for the introduction. Steve, thank you for having us here. It's amazing how in just 2 minutes, that video makes me emotional. and the desire to work to save a community. Dylan, one of the things that we were asked by Steve after he saw the movie was, how can he help and how can you help? And we recognize that there is a tremendous amount of work going on by a number of different groups that are making progress and strides, but it's a really confusing landscape and a really confusing topic. And our goal of this meeting is to kind of try and bring everybody up to speed of where we were, where we are, and where we're hoping to go, and create a number of advocates for the work that we're doing. So, and empower the group of non-voting taxpayers to go out into their communities and sub-communities and, share the story of, the Room for Us, and then share the story of the slides and be able to, explain as you drive by a future project what's going to happen. And then when someone asks you how to help, how to get in touch with Dylan, how to help us lobby at the state, how to help us explain different programs that are available in the community and kind of move us forward. So again, Dylan has created a number of slides for us to work through that is our goal in this presentation. So Dylan, I'll toss to you for a few minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Ellie. Yeah, and I'd like to echo his thanks to all of you for having us today, and to Gene, Steve, and Abby for really bringing us in on this. Like Sully said, this came out of conversations with Gene and Steve about how powerful the movie is, but feeling like what's next, what's going on, what can we do? So like Sully said, we're going to really focus on that. Today. I'm going to give you just a quick overview of our deck. So we're going to start with a rundown of who the organizations are, because it can be a confusing landscape. We're going to talk a little bit about the specifics of the Affordable Housing Trust and how it operates. We're going to do an overview of area median income. We're going to run through our current projects and initiatives, what the subsidized housing inventory is, which you might have heard about, what's next, what are our projects, and then we're going to do a deep dive on, a deepish dive on a few of our main projects that are coming up. So the Housing Production Plan, year-round deed restrictions, the Seasonal Communities Act, before talking about opportunities for partnership and how you guys can really get involved. And then, of course, we'll answer any questions you have. I'm going to stop at various points throughout the talk to make room for questions, but feel free to jump in and ask questions as we go. And Sally and I are going to have sort of just an informal back and forth and flow. So like I said, please feel free to jump in. And everybody, Gene, maybe you can nod if you can see my screen, okay?
Yeah.
Great. All right, so I'm going to give a rundown, like I said, of the housing organizations on the island. So there's my department, the Town of Nantucket's Housing Department, which is my boss, Christy. She's the director, Christy Ferrantella. Myself, our rental property manager, Rachel Field, and Caroline. So our responsibility, we really have two lanes. We do municipal employee housing, and then we do general, affordable, and attainable housing for the community. It's our responsibility to facilitate and coordinate the Affordable Housing Trust. So we carry basically the directives that the Affordable Housing Trust gives us, we carry out. We don't have the authority to do it without them. So they give us the authority. Next, the Affordable Housing Trust. So this is a 7-person appointed board. There's a select board rep, there's a real estate rep who is Sully, and he's the chair. There's a Nantucket Housing Authority rep who's Penny Dye, the vice chair. Abby serves as the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission rep. And then there are 3 at-large members who serve. And so the Affordable Housing Trust is the public board through which the town is legally allowed to use public funds to build affordable housing. So that's the legal mechanism, basically. Of course, we have Housing Nantucket. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them since Anne's here and going to be doing her own talk. But Anne is the executive director. They're the preeminent housing nonprofit on the island. They have a range of expertise. We partner with them. The trust partners with them, and they'll work as a nonprofit developer. They run the Covenant program. They're experts in property moves. They do a lot of different things. There's the Nantucket Housing Authority, which is a public housing agency. They're really focused on the much lower income end of the scale, 30 to 50%. There's a 6-person board, and you can see there's some overlap here. Penny Dye's the chair and the state appointee there.
Dylan,
have
if I may real quick, so the housing
Please.
authority's property exists on the on Myacomet Ave off of Surfside Road, and they are in a management phase of housing, not in a development phase of housing. So they are built out at the current time.
That's a good note. Thank you, Zoe. And then there's the very nascent Nantucket Land Trust. So they just formed. But Tucker Holland's the executive director. He used to be the town's housing director. The land trust model is where the land trust itself owns the dirt and the residents own the building. So it's sort of like a housing co-op if you're familiar, and it's another mechanism where you can place year-round or affordability restrictions without having to go through the public process. So it's another tool, another organization with expanded tool set for us on the island. Of course, there's Habitat for Humanity, which I'm sure you're all familiar with as a national organization. We partner with them frequently at the Affordable Housing Trust. There's the Warming Place, which is the island's only shelter. And then there's Nantucket Food, Fuel, and Rental Assistance, which is exactly what it sounds like. They run the food pantry and they provide financial assistance to folks. And then the land bank's not exactly a housing organization, but they have been increasingly looking for opportunities to partner with the housing department and the Affordable Housing Trust and Housing Nantucket to figure out ways that we can advance both housing and conservation efforts. So that's kind of the rundown of the players on Nantucket. I like to say that they're all kind of have the same name, like there's like 6 words that are in different orders, so it can be a little confusing. So if you have any questions about them, be happy to expand on that. So now I want to talk briefly about the Affordable Housing Trust itself and how it operates. And I think Sully will jump in frequently here to, clarify anything I'm saying. But basically, right now, as it stands, there's 2 main streams of funding. There's the budget override, which extends the town's borrowing capacity beyond the usual limit, so we got $6.5 million at annual town meeting last year. And then we got $5 million in Community Preservation Act funds from the Community Preservation Committee. Both of those had to be approved at annual town meeting. Something to note is that the CPA funds have to be used for projects that are restricted at 100% area median income or below. I'm going to talk in a little bit about the transfer fee, but we're hopeful that we'll get a transfer fee for housing, and then that can initially supplement the CPA and the budget override funds, and then hopefully down the road completely replace those funds. That way the onus on funding affordable housing is no longer on the taxpayer, directly on the taxpayer.
Dylan, I'll just jump in real quick.
Please.
So on funding as it comes into the trust and we find projects and are dedicating funds to projects, our approval process is basically the trust will make a vote, and then anything that we vote that has a cost over $100,000 also has a select board vote to either approve or deny in the process. So there's a multiple check system in the funding of a project.
Everything we do is public. The open session meetings are open to the public. They're typically on the first and third Tuesday of every month. So folks are welcome to join.
And additionally, in the kind of fiscal responsibility concept here, any funding that we use bonded funds for, the projects will go to bond counsel for the town to make sure that we're maintaining the AAA rating and quality of a project to be funded down the road. So there's a nice fiscal oversight to the process.
We spend a lot of time working with the finance department, making sure that things are moving correctly. And then so once the Affordable Housing Trust has the funds from the CPA and the budget override, they vote, as Sully just explained, basically to disperse it out. So here are some examples of projects that the Affordable Housing Trust has partnered on in a variety of ways. So Wiggles Way, a recent example. the Affordable Housing Trust partnered with Housing Nantucket to provide a combination of grants and loans for the development at Wiggles Way, which is a 22 unit, 22 rental unit project, all income restricted between 80 and 150% AMI. So that's, you know, direct grants and loans there. The habitat development on Waite Drive, that was an acceleration grant. So typically Habitat is finishing one building in 3 years. On Waite Drive, they completed 6 units across 3 buildings in 1 year. So it really sped up the process and is a good use of the funds. The Richmond development.
Dylan, I want to jump in that. One of the
Sure.
reasons that it was important for the trust to accelerate that process was prior to Habitat was not qualifying their units on the shy list, and to be able to capture the 6 units in an accelerated manner to maintain safe harbor for the community was a real goal for the trust, and that's been one of the directives we've been working on for a number of years. But we'll come more into the shy and AMI, but that's one of the reasons to do a project like that and accelerate the process. Not alone to get people heads in beds, to get families living.
You muted, sorry.
Sorry, not alone to say, we also wanted to accelerate the process to get families in secure, safe housing.
And then, of course, and then the Richmond development, large rental and ownership development. And one of the many partnerships with the trust was a buy down. So the trust provided funding that led to more of the units being income and year-round restricted in the whole project. And as like Sully was saying, that led to more units on the shy list, which is something we'll get into, but a big, larger strategic goal for us in the housing department and at the Affordable Housing Trust. And then, you know, as I'm sure you are all aware, we can't build our way out of this problem. So we do these developments. If a developer comes to us and wants to partner with us, we want to help them and work with them and capture those units. But there's only so much space. So a lot of our funding also goes to projects like lease to locals, year-round deed restrictions, things that capture housing so that they are year-round and affordably restricted without actually breaking ground, right? Doing development. So now I want to just briefly run through this idea of area median income, which I think is a term that gets thrown around a lot, but folks might not be totally familiar. This metric is at the heart of affordable housing across the country. This is set at the federal level by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So it's a federal metric by county. These are the numbers for Nantucket. They're quite glaring. If you look at the household size for family of 4, you could qualify for attainable housing on Nantucket if you're a family of 4 making just under $400,000 a year. That's how out of reach things are, and gives you a real sense of the numbers. This matters also because
Dylan, can you go back real quick, just 1 second?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think to expand on this chart a little bit, projects that are considered capital A, kind of state affordable housing, fall at 100% AMI or less. And so 80% AMI units, that 130,800, are units that qualify for shy. Then we have a term on Nantucket that we call attainable housing. And attainable housing is really everything from 150% through 240%. And that's the space. The Affordable Housing Trust works in all spaces because we need to create attainable housing. The following chart, when you see rents and sales prices, it's glaring, the marketplace. But just to understand the difference between state definition is 100 or less, and our communities working in both the state category and above.
So we added at town meeting last year, as part of our zoning bylaws, attainable housing was added as a definition. So it's actually a workable thing. It's not just a theoretical concept that we're talking about. It's a defined concept in our bylaws that we are allowed to work on. And it's important because it's right, especially in a place like Nantucket, it's not just the 80%, as Sully was saying, who's locked out of the market. You can be a successful working professional making 100, 150, even 175% area median income and have no opportunities for you. So it's about prioritizing both. We're going to move to the next slide. So this to make those numbers even more concrete, area median income is used to calculate the maximum rent that can be charged, as well as the purchase price of homes. So you can see that, a home ownership unit that's restricted to area median, an area median income of 80% can only be resold or purchased at about $360,000 a year, 240% going up to about 1.1 million.
So I'll
Shelley,
jump
do you
in. Yeah, I'll jump in and put my real estate hat on. As of today, there are no freestanding structures on Nantucket priced at $1,074,000. So the marketplace is really starting at $1.5 million. So this is how desperate our community situation is that even at that double, double and a half the area median income, our real estate marketplace still is unaffordable for people that live here. So coming up with real solutions is a challenge.
And that's why building alone isn't enough, right? Because if you let the free market dictate what the price is going to be, then people are just going to continue to be boxed out. Even if we were able to build a ton, it wouldn't bring the prices down quite enough for people to be able to afford them. I want to pause here for a second and see if there are any questions to this point before I move on to some of the things that we've been working on. I can't see everybody, so maybe just shout out at me.
So it's Peter Halley. I have a question, and the people you're talking to here live in at least two communities, Nantucket being one, and wherever else we are when we're not on Nantucket. And can you briefly relate the Nantucket problem to the problem that's going on in the rest of the country? It seems to be more severe, but it seems that this is a nationwide problem that we have where people's incomes are not going up as fast as the cost of what I'll just call livable housing, whether it's affordable, attainable, or what have you.
Peter, that's a great question.
Should we be thinking about this in that context?
That's a great question. What I like to say is that all of the affordable housing or all of the housing issues facing the nation apply to Nantucket, but not all of the Nantucket issues apply out. Obviously, things are exacerbated when you're on an island. Everything is much more expensive. Everything is much harder to get out here. So, you have a situation where you certainly have investors and people looking for opportunities to make money, but you also have situations where people have to charge high rents or have to, resell their house at the high value, even if they would rather keep it low or sell to a year-round resident or municipal employee because it's the only way that they can keep living on the island or they can make ends meet. So you're absolutely right. It's very connected to what's happening across the Commonwealth and across the country, but it's exacerbated by the fact that there's no land left on Nantucket to build. Even if there was, Nantucket is fragile. You can only do so much development. There are certain rules with Nantucket being a nationally registered landmark that prevent certain kinds of development. So it's an even more extreme and kind of restricted market and restricted environment on Nantucket. But there are certainly parallels and relations to the rest of the state and the country. And I think that you'll see in your home communities, and I see this frequently when we go to conferences and events on the Cape, is you kind of get reverse sticker shock because they'll say like the homes are so unaffordable here, they're reaching $700,000. And you're like, we would love if there were homes like priced like that on the market on Nantucket. So it just gives you a sense of the proportion out here. Does that kind of get your question? I think Sully maybe wants to jump in.
Yeah, I'll jump in too, Peter. And I think the larger issue is coming, out of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. The stigma of affordable housing was a really negative connotation as it was developed throughout communities across the country. And as we recognize in this video, and we recognize as we move through space on Nantucket and who the community of people who need housing are, it's a very different personal opportunity. So as you take these stories and these experiences back to your other communities that you're in, I would just encourage everyone to kind of recognize who the people of need are. They're around you in all spaces. I think we're all drawn to Nantucket for a variety of reasons, but most of, the way that I like to articulate it is I know my acquaintances on Nantucket better than most people know their friends off Nantucket. And whether that's the person at the coffee shop or, the DPW guy that works Main Street or those kind of things, because those are the moments that we all hold special in those conversations. And I think NIMBY has been an obstacle of housing nationwide for many years. So I'll leave it at that.
The other thing I just want to add to that is that we, in the housing department and at the Affordable Housing Trust, we're not acting like Nantucket is going to be the solution for the housing crisis of the Commonwealth, of the Cape, or of the country. But the people who need housing are already here, and they're really critical to the community. So that is also a distinction, right? Like if we were in Cambridge or if we were in somewhere else in the Commonwealth, you might be saying we need to build densely and we need to build abundantly here for the state. But Nantucket's not going to be the solution, right? Because we're an island 30 miles out to sea and there's limited space. So that's another component to it. Any other questions before I move on?
Hi, this is Samantha Pillion. You've mentioned the SHI list several times. What does SHI stand for?
Yeah, great question. SHI stands for Subsidized Housing Inventory List. So I have a whole slide that will dive into kind of the specifics on that in a couple minutes, but we get used to the jargon, so good question. Anyone else? All right, great. So now I just want to touch briefly on what it is that we're actually doing, some completed projects, and then we'll talk about some of the properties that the trust actually owns. So I already talked a little bit about the Richmond development. It's really a series of developments. It's a combination of home ownership and rental units basically in the Mid-Island area. I don't know. Sally, you know the island better than me. Is that Mid-Island accurate?
Yeah, so that's accurate. I think it's important to just kind of look at the background of how that developed. So the developer came to the town and they worked on an MOU to create a densely area of the island for housing. The select board worked with the developer and restricted 25% of all the housing units to fit into the affordable category. And in addition to that, after that approval, the developer came to the trust to seek more funding opportunities, and the trust's interest was to capture even more than the 25% of the housing units at restricted rates under the 240%. So we were able to capture more 80% units, more 100, more 150, more 175. We were able to partner in this development with Housing Nantucket and help them create 3 homes in the neighborhood that housed people. So there's it's a big project that a private developer did that we were able to step in and capture pieces of it, not by owning units, but by owning restrictions.
And the restrictions for the rental units limit it to between 70 and 120% area median income. And the ownership units, the ones that are restricted to between 80 and 240%. So these really cover a range. Of course, Wiggles Way, which we've touched on a couple times already, but just as a reminder, the trust provided funding through grants and loans to Housing Nantucket, who acted as the nonprofit developer, to build 22 rental units restricted between 80 and 150% area median income.
Dylan, I'll jump on that one. Just a background on that deal. The developer came and said, we have this great opportunity to buy this land. Can we buy this land? And we said, sure. We helped give them a grant. We looked at the overall plans. We created mortgage opportunities to lend on the project that will get paid back through their cash flow on rent over a period of time, and help to get the project up and running. The trust worked with the developer on it was almost weekly basis through the number of years on construction processes and keeping things moving along. So that was a really great partnership with Housing Nantucket, and to now see household and families, it's a big win.
Yeah, and also I should add that at the end we also partnered with the land bank, who owns and maintains the green space in front, so it's open to the public and available to the tenants. Um, I wanted to add the Waite Drive dorm. So if you ever go by Waite Drive, this is not affordable housing. It's owned by the town. It's municipal employee housing. So we sometimes will put transient employees, so folks who don't live on Nantucket but have to come out. Whether or not they're, it's mainly for lifeguards in the summer, but other folks who might come infrequently can stay there. There's about 50 beds across 17 rooms. Some are doubles, some are triples. There's a couple like RA resident advisor kind of style dorms in there. So that touches on more of the municipal employee housing stuff that we do. But we did develop that. And then of course talked about the Waite Drive Habitat for Humanity development already. So that's 6 home ownership units. There's 2 2-bedroom single family homes, 2 3-bedroom single family homes, and a duplex. And like Sully talked about, that was accelerated through the funding from the Affordable Housing Trust, both to get it done more quickly and to get those units captured on the subsidized housing inventory list. And then now I'm going to talk about the programs, a little less about development. So we run a closing cost assistance program. So that's up to $15,000 in an forgivable loan, so basically a grant to qualified purchasers to cover their closing costs. Most frequently, the covenant people with covenant lots. So it looks like you want to jump in.
Well, it's forgivable in the sense if the person sells the property and then it goes back to somebody else, it could be recouped to use again. And so our goal is how many opportunities can we, create loans and reuse the funds multiple times, because all of these solutions need to be 100-year solutions, not just near-term solutions.
Yeah. A lot of times just as a side note, a lot of times in the affordable housing world, you'll see that things have like a 30-year restriction on them and then they revert to market rate. And for things that were developed in the 90s, you're kind of like, oh, it wasn't that long ago. And then you realize like, oh my God, those are becoming market rate soon, and we're losing that from our affordable housing inventory. And so same thing with these. We want these to be preferably in perpetuity. And then we provide covenant formation assistance. So for folks who are you have purchased want to create a covenant lot, so they want to subdivide their lot. The loan helps them with the upfront costs, and then once they sell the lot, they give us the money back. So like Sully said, keeping that moving.
And so, but if I may, that project is more than just the loan. Housing Nantucket steps in and assists the homeowner who may not understand the process or getting the engineer or going to planning board. So in that process, anyone who may not have the cash flow to be able to create a covenant lot and want to can. Do we go deeper into covenants later? No,
Well,
okay.
I'm sure Ann will.
Okay, great.
But, and then lease to locals, which is a rental conversion incentive. So for people who it basically provides cash incentives to people to rent to qualified year-round tenants, so income and year-round tenants. We just recently launched a year-round rental preservation program study. So we're looking for to provide a similar incentive to people who are already renting at affordable rates to year-round tenants. So it's kind of the second step there. Our department handles sewer fee connection waivers, so qualified tenants can get a waiver, and those can be quite expensive, somewhere but so like at least around $5,000. So for folks who can't afford it's a waiver for them to get on sewer. We just launched, and the request for proposals actually just closed, the year-round deed restriction program. This is one of our big projects. I'm going to talk about that a bit more later, but it basically, in exchange for cash, homeowners can put a year-round deed restriction on their property. We are launching our 2026 housing production plan. Again, going to get into that more later. The transfer fee advocacy is a huge aspect of what we do. I'm going to talk about that more in a bit. And then we also, this is a fun one, we are partnering with students from Worcester Polytechnic Institute. They're doing a study on adaptive reuse of secondary and tertiary floors in the commercial downtown to see if there's opportunity for housing there. Oh, I went too far. Sorry. So this slide, I'm going to be quick here, but the trust does own several properties. Some are in various stages of development. For example, Orange Street, Vesper, and Bartlett. We just awarded the contract to Affirmative Investments, which is a development company that submitted the RFP. 12 Honeysuckle Drive is currently being leased to, I believe, employee housing. And then we're coming up with a master plan for 55 Fairgrounds and 10 Parker Lane. But I just wanted to give you all a sense of where the properties are that the Affordable Housing Trust owns. And we can talk a little bit more about, yeah, Sally, go ahead.
I'd just like to jump in and talk about kind of where these properties came from, because it's interesting how the trust acquires properties. So 135 and 137 Orange Street was a free market on for sale property that a number of years ago the trust negotiated and purchased outright on the free market. 8 White Street was is referred to as a bargain sale. So the owner of that property brought it to the trust and sold it for under market value. They were then able to take a tax deduction on the difference as the gift. So at the time they sold that to the trust at $1.5 million, and it probably had a $2.5 million value. So that was very advantageous. Bartlett Road was a free market purchase. 14 Somerset, the owner of that property came to the trust first and offered it. And so we were able to work in a calm and thoughtful pace and not compete in the free market. Same with 55 Fairgrounds and 10 Parker. We were able to work out a longer stage sale and development plan with that owner, who also was able to do a bargain sale, maintain some life rights at the property, and were able to develop portions of it over time. And so there's all kinds of ways that property can come to us. There is not really town property that is available to the community to build housing on. As we live in such a constrained and constricted, there's so many needs, whether it's airport or water quality or such.
And of
Back to
course,
you, Don.
Brian, as you'll recall, this is Gary Beller. I was the one, with your help, that sold 7 Amelia Drive to the town so they could eventually use it to get to the back parking lot and put up affordable housing.
That's exactly right. So, one of your members very graciously came to the trust to make this property available. And going back to the RFPs that Dylan mentioned that are out for Orange Street, Bartlett, and Vesper, we're looking at the creation of 52 additional units.
And we'll talk. I have a slide for that, Sully, so we can
Great.
jump in with some more info on those. But anything else before I move on? Okay. So I think now that we have, kind of an overview of who the players are and what it is that we do and have been doing and are continuing to do, it's a good moment to kind of take stock and get a grasp of what the subsidized housing inventory list is. So this is a state-maintained list of ostensibly affordable housing units. This is based around the Chapter 40B law, essentially. So in Massachusetts, municipalities have to be at 10% of their housing stock, which is determined at the decennial census, as affordable housing. Otherwise, they're open to 40B developments under Chapter 40B, which can, as long as they meet certain affordable housing requirements, primarily that 25% of their units are restricted to 80% area median income or below, can develop and skirt some local zoning, essentially. So they have more leeway than they would otherwise. Chapter 40B is a great law. It's difficult on Nantucket given our lack of space and very particular social and built environment, right? So we like to maintain control, more local control over that kind of development. So when you're not at 10%, you can maintain what's called safe harbor, which gives local control over 40B developments back so long as you make enough progress. Believe it's 1% or 0.5% a year towards 10%, towards that 10% goal. So we're currently in safe harbor and at 6.5% of the 10%, 6.5% affordable housing. So we have 405 units currently on the shy list. By 2020, sorry, yeah, 2026. No, 2020, I believe 2025. I think I have a typo on the slide. 2020, no, it's 2025 now. By 2026, we'll be at 590. And then within the next couple of years beyond that, we will hit our 10% goal, which is 618. And then in 2030, with the new decennial census, once those numbers come out, we'll have to reassess and see where we're at. But once you hit the 10%, you don't have to worry as much about maintaining safe harbor through the development. The thing to know about the shy list is that if you take, we have a development that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. That's a 32-unit development. 25% of those units are restricted to 80% area median income. But all 32, even the 20, what is it, 20, I'm so bad at math, 24 units that are market rate will go on the shy list. So just because we have 405 units on the shy list, only about 150 of them are actually restricted. This is a holdover from the 80s and 90s when there was just simply not enough apartment housing around Boston. And so they wanted to just encourage development of apartments, both at restricted rates and at affordable levels. So it's totally imperfect, and we're not building to the 10%. That's not the goal in terms of solving the crisis, but it is important in terms of maintaining local control. So that when we talk about the subsidized housing inventory and keeping things on the shy list, this is what it is that we're talking about. So anything you want to jump in and add?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand the difference between ownership and rental.
Thank you. Yeah.
When you have an ownership shy unit, it is a 1-for-1 count. So if you build a unit like Habitat for Humanity and they go and they sell that unit by lottery, a family owns it and gets to live there, and that counts on the shy list. The other project we can talk about is the Wiggles Way project, where 25% of the units are at 80% AMI, but all 22 units count on the shy list, and they're just rental, like Dylan was saying. While there has been a goal to get us to the 680 units and maintain safe harbor for the community, the real goal is to kind of start to begin to switch our mindset once we get a little closer to that and move to an ownership model moving forward, because ownership is where communities exist, and we want to make sure we're managing that. The most interesting thing about the chart is how serious our community got in 2020 or in 2019 to really focus and work on this problem, because housing has been an issue on Nantucket. You can go back and see, old newspapers from the 80s and 90s and 2000s where there's major headlines every year about the housing crisis. But the community has really taken a vested effort in the last 5 years.
And I think, Sully, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the ownership threshold is 100% area median income for inclusion on the shy.
You may be correct.
So I think the threshold for inclusion on ownership is a little bit higher, or a little bit lower in some respects than the threshold for rental, which is 80%.
But jumping back to the previous slide that we looked at, which was the chart of AMIs and sales prices, to create 100% units, we're talking about, I think it was like $375,000.
Right.
So we need to heavily subsidize units to get ownership shy units.
And like we were talking about, we want to be building for the 150, 175, 200, 240% area median income too. And those are not included on the shy. So it's central to what we do, but it's not the only thing, right? All right. So now actually might be a good time to stop if there's any other questions just for now before moving on.
I have a question.
I have a question for you. With respect, AMI is going to continue to increase because inflation is going to keep going. That means that, is there a prejudice that we'd rather have the town own more of the properties than privately held? Because if it's privately held, AMI increases and those private owners can continue when the leases expire, getting greater amounts just because they still fit within the then current AMI. So is there any kind of a preference to have the town own more than private owners?
Well, I think Sally has a good answer for this. I just want to say, I think that it's a great question, and it is great when the town or the trust has maintains control. But the thing about the trust or the town owning property is we have to go through public procurement for everything. So it increases our costs, and it increases the onus on the town and therefore the taxpayer. So, yes and no. Sally,
I think
anything you
best,
want to add?
to jump in there, Dylan, I think best practices, Gary, is that the town owns restrictions on properties and works with developers. So your point about costs and inflation, maintenance will continue to rise on all of these things and sizes of departments. So the what we're finding the most fiscally responsible thing for the trust to be doing is find partners like Housing Nantucket, Habitat for Humanity, and developers at Richmond and some of these other projects, to then control restrictions on use, maintenance. The nice thing about the town owning and managing a restriction is they can be in perpetuity. They're not like most land use restrictions that expire after 20 or 30 years.
Right, right.
I think there was another question.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Lewis.
Um, it's obvious from what you had up on the screen earlier that every new building that goes up on Nantucket adds to our obligation for affordable housing. What I wanted to know is the town doing anything to get those people that are building those new structures to pay toward the need for affordable housing?
So there isn't necessarily a fee to go that route. And I'll leave it to Ann to speak to later. But Ann and Housing Nantucket spearheaded a zoning article that's generally referred to through the state as inclusionary zoning. And so when you build a certain number of units or more, a portion
Five.
have to become, so it's 5 units, then you have to start creating affordable housing. But again, I'll leave that to Ann because she steered that process and that opportunity and that win for the community. And that was just last year's town meeting.
Yeah, so one further question. This is very interesting and there's a lot of nuts and bolts. But as they say, when you ask the time, you don't want to, you're not asking how to build a watch. And so my question is, what is the time here? We're looking at this goal based on, the 10% and all the rest of it. What is the actual need on Nantucket? When you look at the human beings that don't have access to housing, is it bigger than that? Whatever we're short of the 10% goal, is it smaller? If it's bigger, how many orders of magnitude?
So Peter, we don't have a great study that gives you the answer that you might be looking for, but anecdotally, I'll tell you this, that 40% of the housing units on Nantucket are considered year-round. And at some point, they're all going to be unaffordable. And so if we think about the 3-bedroom, 2-bath Cape across the street from the high school that was built in 1992, that now is $2 million, that's unaffordable. So to maintain a community, we're going to need 30% of the total housing stock at least to be committed to year-round people. And if we have to do that through restrictions or regular ownership, I don't know the answer. If I could wave, your magic wand and solve this problem, I would have $750 million and I would go out and buy a restriction on all of the remaining 25% year-round properties that are out there and create a secondary bifurcated market. And that would be what time it was. And we could do that. We're going to tell you a little bit more about those concepts and how to get there with the money in a few more slides.
And I want to note, Housing Nantucket and Ann just partnered with an economic consulting firm, EPB, to do an updated study. So we'll leave that to her to talk about the results of the housing needs assessment they just did. But there is an update that Ann can speak to. Donald, I think you've had your hand up for a little.
Yes, I was wondering, what's the approach to the Nantucket Shuffle, where people can get housing up to 9 to 10 months, but then summer residency occurs. The
So
other-
all of our
and
programs,
there's one other point I'd
Sure.
like to make. There are several billionaires on this island, and I haven't seen them used as a resource to provide the money to deal with it, because when they do that, they improve the lives for themselves by actually allowing for housing for year-round people.
So Donald, that's exactly why we're here today, that Dylan, Ann, and I think you're correct. Up to this point, we haven't had that participation, but being here to create more advocates through your group, and how do we gain access to more and more people? Money is part of the need of the solution. And so if we can create you as an advocate in your community of people on Nantucket and help bring them back to us, that's why we're here with our time today.
and in terms of
If you have anybody in your cell phone, you want to give me their number, I'm happy to make a cold call.
And in terms of the shuffle, that's what the year-round, right? Year-round deed restrictions. Year-round is defined as the tenant has to be there for 10 out of 12 months of the year. And then those other 2 months, if the unit is vacant, they can't rent for them for less than 31 days. So all of the things that we do, we make sure to require that this is going to, the people cannot, if you own a rental property and you're renting it, you can't kick out the tenant to boost up the prices in the summer. So I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
Really don't. Donald, the lease to locals program is that goal. So there's kind of a kicker subsidy that goes to the property owner, and where they get the short-term rental money. If they came to us instead, the goal is to get them closer to neutral and put somebody in the unit year round. And so whether that's a guest cottage or the whole house, one of the struggles on Nantucket is that most people who own homes want to use them for some portion of the year. But if you're using a portion of your property, guest house, as a short-term rental, we would love you to come look at the Lease to Locals program. There's an opportunity to get some additional funding to, quote, keep you whole and then keep a family in the house on a year-round basis.
Yeah.
So that's the direct solution to the question you asked.
Good point, Tyler. I think
And we have one more
question.
hand up. Is that Kathy?
Yes, it is. Sorry, I'm on the town committee thing. I don't know when the time would be to ask this question, so I'm just going to throw it out there for whoever's the proper speaker. The seasonal communities designation that Nantucket just got, just was curious about what kind of positive impacts you see for that for Nantucket.
Kathy, I have a whole slide for that, so we can.
Perfect. All right, I'll
yeah.
I'll put my hand down. Thank you.
Of course. Great question.
You muted.
Whoops.
Sorry. I want to be mindful of the time, and I know, Anne's going to present, so I'm going to try and move a little quickly through what's left, although a lot of what's left is sort of the bulk, not the bulk, but the meat. So I do want to make sure to give it the proper attention. So we've covered what we're doing and what we've done, so I think the question is really what's next. So we do have developments, as we've talked about. Sully spoke a little bit about the Orange Street, Vesper Lane, and Bartlett Road developments. So Orange Street's going to be 32 rental units. Workforce housing in our zoning, workforce housing has affordability restrictions. At least a quarter have to be at 80% or below. The Vesper Lane project is going to be 17 rental units, and they're going to be age restricted.
Orange Street's going across from Marine Home Center, just to give you kind of a visual concept of where it is.
And Bartlett Road is 12 rental units, also workforce housing. And we actually put this out as a bundled request for proposal. So it was awarded to Affirmative Investments, who will be doing the development for all of these. So it's a really efficient way to move through that process. Yeah.
Coming back to Vesper real quick, this will be a over 55 housing development. This also was an interesting land use purchase conversation. So the Affordable Housing Trust purchased land from University of Massachusetts. So this took approval from the state. It was a long negotiation. We purchased a larger lot than we now own. We had the opportunity to trade the lot with the hospital for one that they owned directly next door. and they will have the bonus of greater units. So they're going to create hospital housing units next door to our over 55 units. And so that was a really exciting development opportunity to get some density that'll be well served in the area.
Thanks, Ollie. And Tacoma Green, so this is the development on 4 fairgrounds that's going to be breaking ground hopefully soon. It's going to be 64 rental units, serving between I believe 30% and 120% area median income on the restricted units. So we're really excited about that. This has been a long time coming, this project. New Downtown is also a rental development of 32 units, 8 of which will be restricted to 80% area median income or less. That's going across the street from Stop and Shop. So you've probably seen some of that work already underway. So those are all adding significantly to the shy list. And then is 55 Fairgrounds and 10 Parker Lane. So this was
Come back
Sully
to
spoke about
come
this.
back to Tacoma real quick. The on the new downtown, all of those units are restricted to year-round occupancy. And so that was part of a planning board and trust conversation to make sure that that stayed as a year-round spot.
And one thing to think about, which I'll talk about again in a bit, is that the year-round restriction in some ways acts as an affordability restriction, not necessarily on rental, but on ownership units with a year-round restriction, that is going to inherently dampen the price, and so therefore, or the value, and so therefore, keep it more affordable. 55 Fairgrounds and 10 Parker Lanes. This was somebody who reached out to the trust who wanted to see her property be used for year-round, basically municipal employee housing, maybe teachers, maybe nurses. And so we ended up purchasing the land, but there's a life estate on it. So the resident is allowed, lives there, maintains control over it, and then it will pass into our ownership. And we're currently in the process we just actually received a grant to put together a master plan for that project. And so we're envisioning, multiple units, affordable year-round.
That property's what was really appealing to the trust on that property is it's located in a zone that has access to sewer and water. It's on the bus route. It's paved. It's a 2-acre property in 10,000 square foot zoning. So we will be able to create 8 lots. And we were also, we were able to step in and avoid a vacation developer developing 8 vacation homes. So that was a real nice opportunity for the owner to achieve their goals and the town to manage and control the property moving forward.
Thanks, Ollie. And then, of course, like we've talked about, it's not all about development. We are, the RFPs for the year-round deed restriction pilot program just closed, and we're hoping that what we learn out of that program will lead to an expanded year-round deed restriction program, which I'm going to talk about more in a bit. We're hoping to implement the year-round rental preservation program. So we have lease to locals, which incentivizes people to rent to year-round residents at affordable rates. The rental program would provide incentives to people who are already doing so it would fill that niche. We are actively exploring the good landlord tax exemption. So we hear from people all the time, and this might apply to some of you, that, I own and I rent year round, or I rent my property on Nantucket, but I don't live there, so I'm not eligible for the residential tax exemption. What can I do? And so this would provide a residential tax exemption to people who own property and rent it at affordable rates to year-round residents. So it supplements the rental preservation incentive. And then we also are in the process of thinking about some of the properties that the trust owns. You know what, maybe we should get off of those. We should sell them and make housing opportunities that way, because sometimes having the trust own the property, forces us to go through public procurement, makes the cost much higher in a difficult way. And so we're actively exploring certain properties that we want to, partner with other groups and developers so that they can turn it into housing or renovate. Sully, anything you want to add there?
No, we're good.
Great. So I'm going to dive a bit deeper into some of the specific projects that I think are really important to what it is that we're doing. But I'm going to try and move quick, being mindful of time. So we just launched, as I said, the 2026 Housing Production Plan. This is completed every 5 years. It's based on the numbers in the decennial census. It it's what it sounds like. It lays out the housing goals for Nantucket. It is not a requirement, so towns do not have to do it, but it is important for the shy list. So basically, it lays out what your goals are based on the census numbers, and then you build to those numbers. The HPP, once it's finished, it gets approved by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which is the state agency. And then as you make progress on the development, you go back to the EOHLC and you certify that you're making those progress rather. And that's the mechanism for maintaining safe harbor, essentially. So that's a big project that we've hired Barrett Planning to work on, and those interviews are going to be kicking off and underway.
I'll just note that if anybody feels input that they can provide through this group or community when Judy Barrett and Barrett Enterprises is working on that project, public input for the HPP is critical. And so if there was any vote, determination, statement by this organization, I think that it would be meaningful in Judy's report.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, I really want to talk about the year-round deed restriction program. So we have a pilot program underway that was started with $2 million in funding. The idea is that right now there are people in Nantucket who have equity in their homes but can no longer afford to live here. They maybe bought their homes in the 80s and 90s when it was $250,000, $300,000. Now their homes are worth 2, 3, 4 million, but they don't have the cash to keep living here and they don't want to leave their community. So in exchange for a cash payment through the deed restriction program, they would put a year-round deed restriction on their home. Now the deed restriction is going to restrict the equity of the house. And there's a delta between what the cash payment is and the equity that's lost. So it's sort of a question where we're trying to discover through the pilot program is what can you kind of put a number on the value on people wanting to stay on Nantucket? Right. So like, let's say you're a retiree and you can no longer afford to live here. What are you willing to take to kind of lose that equity in your home? But then that house is forever deed restricted, in perpetuity. And this goes directly to what Sully is saying in terms of creating a bifurcated market, where you have the free market, you have the open market, the free market, and then you have the deed restricted homes that are being sold to year-round residents only at this more affordable rate. So we got a number of responses to our pilot program, and the awards are going to go out on December 15th. They're going to decide who gets those awards. The limit on the cash payment is 20% of the appraised value. And then we're hoping to expand the program out from there. So, more funding, kind of change some of the guidelines. It's very technical. We don't have to get into all of that, but this is a really key project for what we're doing in terms of capturing housing and creating more housing without actually doing development. Go ahead, Sally.
I think it's also important to understand that under the existing rules that are out there, we are only able to fund these projects that meet in the 240% AMI or below these deed restrictions. Through seasonal communities designation and a new definition created at the state level, we will be able to fund above those. So hopefully the next rollout of a version of year-round deed restrictions could be a higher valuation.
So now to seasonal communities. So good segue. So Nantucket is one of the communities that was automatically basically adopted as a seasonal community. Town voters did have to technically accept it, and they did. So we have the seasonal communities designation. Meg Trudell, who is the deputy director of planning, she is our Nantucket's representative on the Seasonal Communities Advisory Council. The council had a meeting out here in September. This is a picture of some of us, including Anne, with Senator Sear at the advisory council meeting. The draft regulations for the seasonal communities guidelines were released in October. The trust, in collaboration with the NPEDC and the select board, sent comments in saying, here's what works for us, here's what doesn't. And to get to Kathy's question, there's a lot in the seasonal communities designation. some of which we already do, right? Like ADU by right, we're already doing that. But there's a lot of really powerful tools that we don't have yet. So this, what Sully was saying is we could create, and hopefully it will be the same board, but we could now have a year-round housing trust that uses public funds for year-round housing that doesn't also have to have an affordability restriction on it. It allows for an increase in the residential tax exemption from 35 to 50%. Any project that has public funds used can also have municipal preference. So you can say, we want this house. When this goes to lottery, folks who work for the town have preference, which is really critical to what we're doing, making sure that we have those, first responders, DPW or employees, et cetera, have housing. And we're hopeful that maybe the transfer fee could get added through the seasonal communities designation, which I'll speak a little bit more about in a moment. But that's kind of the overview of the seasonal communities. And the final regulations have not been released. That's what we're thinking about. Kathy, do you have any questions out of that?
No, that was perfect. Thank you. I just knew it was a mix in here. I didn't know if you had a slide. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Donna, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I do. I was wondering, as we're going through the seasonal communities, has there been any thought given to including one of our members on this kind of committee, since we are seasonal, if you will?
That's a great question. So the seasonal advisory council is at the state level, and I think it's drawing a little bit of a distinction between it's recognizing seasonal communities with the year-round population of seasonal communities, right? So places like Nantucket or places like Wellfleet or the Berkshires, they're distinct from other areas in the Commonwealth because their economy is so centered around the idea of the seasonal community. Right. So I think I see what you're saying, but I think there's a little bit of a distinction there. But it's a great question. The representative
We'll
for
ask
Nantucket,
Julia.
like I said, is Meg. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get an email done off to Senator Sear, because that's a great question. I haven't contemplated it.
It's it might provide an additional perspective.
No, and I think it's a good perspective, right? All of you taking this time today in support of housing in a seasonal community as a seasonal resident is an important statement. And that's part of our ask on the last slide, but we'll come back to that. But I think that's a good question to see if there's an opportunity on the advisory council.
Thank you.
Any more seasonal communities or year-round use restriction or housing production plan questions before I move on? Looks like Gary might have one.
Mention one thing. It didn't get a good reception when I mentioned it to Libby a while ago. I mentioned to her at a meeting in July that I was interested in the fact that the state of New Jersey has put a mansion tax in, and whereas we're talking about, the transfer fee of 0.5% in the New Jersey law, which is now in effect, the mansion tax goes not 0.5%, it goes up to 3%. So that on the sale of property, the houses of that amount, these funds, 3% is collected, and it's used for the most important, for me at least, was coastal resilience and affordable housing. And I wanted to try to see whether or not we were going to think about that, or maybe suggest that to our friends over at Martha's Vineyard as well, to see if we could talk about a mansion tax. But it's gotten no positive references since I mentioned it. So I'm just curious to think whether or not we might be able to think more about that. Thank you.
Gary, we have a lot of progress on that. We'll give you an update on the next slide.
Yeah. And I just want to say, like, the mansion tax is something that I've definitely been following. I know Rhode Island has been a leader in that. I'm from New Jersey, so glad to see they're doing the right thing. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of the transfer fee and I think why that's the right solution for us. I think one thing that we hear a lot is this, the opponents of the transfer fee are opposed to it as a tax. It's really not a tax. So we kind of can get around that, but we'll talk about that now. But Gary, I just want to say it is something that we're actively thinking about and aware of as a potential solution. All right, so the transfer fee. This is a big one. I spent a lot of time talking to Gene and Steve about this.
I just want to note, like, the transfer fee and the mansion tax are synonymous. They're basically the same thing. And so we've been lobbying in Boston as a community for more than 10 years. As a community, we've sent a home rule petition there. And recently, as the governor's Affordable Homes Act, the transfer fee was in the $4 billion act. It got stricken kind of on the floor and came out. What went in was seasonal communities, and we're hoping that seasonal communities is the path to this. Just this past week, the largest opposition to the transfer fee is MAR, the Massachusetts Association of Realtors. And just this past week, myself, Penny Dye, and some real estate brokers from Martha's Vineyard were on a call with Representative Haggerty, who's the co-chair of the Housing Committee, which the transfer fee is in front of. And we were lobbying that, MAR does not represent us in seasonal communities as realtors. And we have successfully, as a community, worked with a transfer fee since 1985, right? The Land Bank is the most successful organization on Nantucket using the transfer fee for good. And we're seeing different ways now that they're implementing across the island, whether it's supporting the food bank or in many additional ways. So we are making active progress. So I'll come back to you, Dylan, for the slide.
Yeah, thank you, Sally, for clarifying. So, like you said, the real estate transfer fee is modeled off of the land bank. The difference is that we're asking for 0.5% on transactions over $2 million on only the amount over 2 million. So if you sold a home for $2.5 million, you would pay a $2,500 fee that would be bookmarked for the Affordable Housing Trust and used for affordable housing. The transfer fee can look a little different depending on the legislation. In July, we advocated in support of the statewide bill, which would give all municipalities across the Commonwealth the option to implement a transfer fee. In September, we advocated for our home rule petition, which is exactly as I described it. So it's tailored to Nantucket specifically. And then in October, we advocated on behalf of the seasonal community transfer fee, which is a bit broader. It's 0.5% up to 2% buyer or seller, but the municipality gets to choose. So in effect, it's the same as the home rule petition because we would implement it the way we want to implement it. So we have sent, there was a panel of 4 in July. There was, let me just run through this, Sally, and then I'll jump to you. We had a panel of 12 in September, including 5 people in person. We had a panel of 12 in October. And in the October and for September, the home rule petition, which is the one we really gear up the most for, we sent probably close to 100 letters, including 65 letters from NAREB, the Nantucket Association of Real Estate Brokers, who are very strongly saying MAR and the opposition to the transfer fee does not speak for us. So there's a lot of momentum here, and there are several different vehicles to get the transfer fee passed, either through the home rule petition, through the statewide bill, or through seasonal communities. So we're really optimistic and hopeful that at least one of these will be possible. So, and I just want to say before. Go ahead, Sally.
Dylan, I just want to cut you off real quick. One of the things that I heard from Rep. Haggerty when we were on the call the other day is their concern is, or the concerns that he hears from other legislators, is this doesn't necessarily fit all 250 or 351 communities in the state. And it's important to understand that this would be an opt-in for every community. And so it doesn't have to happen in every community, but each community can decide if they want to opt into it. And so it would just, getting these bills passed, and then locally we would make the decision, as Dylan said, is it 0.5%? Is it 2%? Is it 2 million? Is it? So it's really important as we look to you to help lobby our community to understand that these are opt-in options that we will then take another local vote for.
And one of the most powerful impacts you guys can have is that you have your feet in both communities, and so you can speak to your reps if you're from Massachusetts, if you live in Massachusetts year round, Gene, I believe you're in Somerville. Do I remember that correctly? Speaking to your reps in Somerville, that's really powerful to get them on board, right? Because we know senators here, we know Rep Moakley, they're gonna, champion this. They're writing the legislation. We don't have to convince them, but we have to get the rest of the legislature to support this. Go ahead, Gene. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Dylan, after we spoke, I happened to run into Tommy Vitolo, who's the state rep for Brookline, and had a conversation with him. I know I've known Tommy for years, and he was very amenable to supporting it for towns like Brookline, where we have towns like Nantucket, where we have unique living situation, et cetera. And I think if you look at all of the non-voting taxpayers, I don't know how many thousands of people we make up, but if roughly 25% of them live in Massachusetts, we probably have somebody who covers just about every state rep district in the state, and we ought to be calling on them. And my experience with Tommy Vitolo was very positive. So I think we can really add value as non-voting taxpayers.
Thank you, Gene. I just want to say, like, that is exactly why we wanted to come and speak to you guys today, is that exact, mobilization and power that you guys have. This is a real opportunity for partnership between the, Town of Nantucket, the Affordable Housing Trust, and the advisory committee. Donna, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question about the 0.5%.
Mhm.
Why isn't it more? Because if you look at it and what you're saying, 0.5% on transactions over 2 million, that's like $2,500.
So
Is that like sort of, well, let's get it passed and then go from there and raise it, or?
I think there's a few answers to that. One is that at the lowest level, it'd be 2,500, or not at the lowest level, but if at the lower end, right, it would be these small chunks. But if you think about a $40 million sale or a $30 million sale where it's 0.5%, it's still not that much, but it certainly adds up. I think last year, it's hard to calculate exactly without knowing the exemptions and the carve outs, but last year it would have been about $5 million for the town over the whole year. And so if you think about that with the way, getting that money and stewarding that money properly over decades, the way the land bank has with their fee, it would really add up over time. Now, I'm not against a higher threshold, but I do think that there is a feeling of
Dylan,
like what. Sure.
if I may jump in, Donna, more directly, right? Dylan's history is limited, and it's fascinating and incredible to me how quickly he has become an Nantucketer and is doing such an amazing job. But 10 plus years ago, when the home rule petition left Nantucket for the first time, the half a percent, 2% conversation was a negotiation to get a unanimous vote to get it to Boston. And so at the time, the real estate climate, the numbers were significantly different. The values were they were half of what they are today, if not even less. So could that number be adjusted? Absolutely. Could that be in a negotiation or conversation? That's why the statewide fee and the transfer fee is a 0.5% to 2%. So if our home rule petition doesn't pass and gets gobbled up by one of these others, this is a discussion we can have at the floor of town meeting and amend those figures. Because would I like to see it higher? Yes. Would I like to see it pass in any form? Definitely.
And I just want to say that all of the legislation has the opportunity to not just change the threshold, but not just change the percent, but also change the threshold. So if, housing prices continue to climb and it became that, the threshold should really be 3 million, you could move up the threshold. So it is dynamic. But Don, I like that question. I like that energy.
Yeah, me too.
Behind it.
It's an easy solution.
Yes. And that's the thing.
And very
I think-
manageable.
and the thing about the transfer fee is that, it is understandable that there are year-round residents and taxpayers who feel like they are footing the bill for affordable housing. for a problem that they have not caused necessarily, and are frustrated about the votes at town meeting. The transfer fee takes that onus off of the local taxpayer. And that's really one of the powers. And so obviously if it passed, we wouldn't be able to stop going to town meeting and asking for CPA and budget overrides right away. But hopefully over time, especially if it was 2%, we could wean ourselves off of that and you rely on this funding.
That's really the burden financial group, right? The group that is at the meeting and really struggling between, high insurance costs, higher assessments. That's a really tight group. Unfortunately, those of you that are attending don't get a vote. You very generously support the override. And, we appreciate the support of this group financially in our community. But it would be nice to take the burden off of some of the creation of new housing is important, but keeping people in their housing is equally important on the island.
Well said. And I'm wondering why it's on the seller. Why not put it on the purchaser?
So I was just going to actually address that. So most of the other municipalities have it on the purchaser. On Nantucket, we want it to be on the seller for a few reasons. Like most places, the value of any property is in the dirt, and that's a reflection of the community, right? The structure itself is not the value. And so, we see on Nantucket people who have, are either coming in and leaving quickly, and so we think they should have to pay their fee on the way out the door, or they've been here for a long time and they have appreciated so much value that it's seen as philosophically giving back to the community who helped the value of their property appreciate so much. So that's one component to it. The other thing is we don't want it to be a barrier to entry. And with prices already so high and with them already paying the land bank fee on the way in, we think that it's better to have it on the seller. But it's a great conversation to be had, and depends. I think most of the communities on the Cape, and I think the Vineyard, they have it on the buyer. But our approach is a little different.
Donna, my experience as a real estate broker, these fees come out of the transaction, right? And the transaction will find free market to get there, and it will be kind of included in sort of the value of the property as it sells. And whether we, as it balances out on the HUD, whether we put it on one side of the column or the other, it really comes from the free market valuation in general.
So our last slide, and I'm going to let Sully take the lead here on this one for most of it, but just the other big opportunity for partnership, which we've already talked about a lot today, are resident participation. So whether or not that means if you or somebody you know is interested in a bargain sale, entering into a life estate like 55 Fairgrounds and 10 Parker, if you're interested in renting or know folks who are interested in renting, and of course joining the advocacy at multiple levels. So I'll let Sully jump in if there's anything to add there. But our goal is really, like we've said, to have you guys either involved directly or involved through your communities. Sully, anything to close with?
Not really. I just want to say that, Dylan's office provides incredible support. So whether it's for advocacy and helping you find reps or senators or getting letters out the door, if there's any opportunity that you're communicating with someone who is considering being selling their home and moving on from Nantucket, if they would come have a private conversation with Dylan's office, prior to making a move to the free market, and any opportunity that would exist there. And whether it's rental sales, we're here to help support, the community. So however we can be a resource. Hopefully today we've shown, we're getting a lot of work done, doing a lot of things. I know we've gone long, and thank you for the attentiveness. Very much appreciate it. I know that I personally am running short on time. I'm getting glaring looks from my family, but I want to make sure we cover a couple of last questions.
Yeah,
I think we also need Ann to say a few words.
Yes, Ann is here as
Awesome.
well. Just because I might have to step off, I don't mean to stop.
So I guess my question, you've mentioned a number of times, you or Dylan have mentioned us saying something. And precisely what it is that you want us to say. Has somebody written something that could be put in the form of a motion, or what is that?
So we have letters of support of the transfer fees that would be great if you would consider signing individually and as a group. And that we can Dylan can deliver to you all to send to your reps and the housing committee. Additionally, making calls to your individual reps, and if you need to help access to find them, the housing office can help you do that.
And I
And
think keeping us,
what-
as Sully said, keeping us in mind for both yourselves and for your communities and friends in terms of as they're thinking about their own properties and what they want to do, if they want to do something with it, whether that be renting or selling, keeping us in mind. Sully says everybody thinks when they're selling their property of the land bank, which is great. We have a great partnership and support the land bank. The Affordable Housing Trust wants to step in and also be one of the first things on their mind when people want to sell and not just sell in the open market. I think would be the other.
We want to become mind share and deal flow before you think about calling your broker. Like, can we vet through the trust, and how do you share that in your community of people?
Back to the advocacy piece of this. What is the timing? If you would want somebody to make a motion here and say something, what is the timing of that? Is there any critical timing? Because it strikes me that this is something that we probably would need to discuss further. And what I'm really asking you, does something have to be done today, or our next meeting will probably be a month from now?
So the written submission deadline has passed for the home rule petition. They are accepting written submissions until I believe December 3rd or December 5th for the seasonal communities transfer fee. I do not think that you need, I mean,
Well, no, Dylan, I think a motion for the non-voting taxpayer to support an advocacy letter on seasonal communities would be an appropriate motion for this board, and for you to provide them with that letter with their approval to sign. I think that, Peter, if you're looking for an actionable motion, I think it would be that.
Okay.
maybe pending review of the letter if you wanted to add that language in.
We just wanted to be clear as to what the ask was.
No, I think that's the ask for today of this group.
Okay.
Kathy?
So
sorry.
Kathy's had her hand up for.
Just quickly, I wanted to know if this URL is going to be a link to this presentation. I just want to have a link to your presentation if I could for our minutes.
Yeah, I'll share the presentation. I also have a number of materials about the things that we talked about today that I would like to share with the group. So I'll probably get that out to you on Monday.
Thank you.
And so we have Ann coming up now. Is that?
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very much. Sorry that went long.
Great.
Wonderful job, Dylan. Sorry?
And I was just going to say, do you want me for anything at the very, very beginning, or are you okay if I drop off? I just want to support you if you need me.
Nope, fine.
Okay, great.
Yep, you did a great job. You're going to make my life easy. I'm going to be about 5 minutes here because you provided such a comprehensive overview of the housing landscape. So I appreciate that. I appreciate Jean. Thank you for inviting me, and Steve and Abby also, and all of you for your time here on Saturday morning. So Housing Nantucket. I'm Ann Cuspa, the director of Housing Nantucket. I've been the director since, for about 15 years now. Housing Nantucket's been around since 1994. We are a private nonprofit whose mission is to create equitable housing solutions for Nantucket's year-round community. And we are partners. We're a community development partner, most specifically with the town and others within the community, to create housing year-round ownership and rental opportunities. We're the only community development corporation on the island, and that means that's a state recognition. We are able to provide community investment tax credits, so that's a state tax credit for our donors of over $1,000. They get 50% state tax credit back, and Jean and Susan Briskman take advantage of that. I see Virginia and Bob Vidoni on the call also. So we are a nonprofit, so we raise money, and that's one of the benefits that we're able to give to our donors. Some of the ways that we create affordable housing are through affordable rental, our affordable rental program. We have 62 scattered site homes around the island. Many of them were created through our house recycling program, where we accept dwellings, move them from point A to point B, land that's usually given to us by the town, and then we refurbish those homes and then rent them out at affordable rates to the community. We also run the Covenant program, which is a homeownership program. Right now, there are 121 of those in scattered sites around the island. We also manage the Lease to Locals program that you heard about before. We're handing that off to the town to manage effective January 1st. And we manage housing for the Nantucket Education Trust. We also do energy and sustainability initiatives across the island. We install solar panels. We're actually a very large solar generator because solar power generator, because we try to generate solar for our tenants, but then also it helps the surrounding communities, because oftentimes we're able to overbuild for what the tenants need, and then we can put that back into the grid. So that's how we do our work. I guess I know you heard a lot of stuff here. I thought I wanted to kind of run through an example. I thought maybe just the most efficient use of the time here. Dylan had mentioned the Wiggles Way project as one of our recent successes. This is 22 units, mixed income, all rental, all fully occupied. We just completed that project in July, and I thought we could go through like how our projects work and how we're able to combine municipal funding with philanthropic support to generate the housing that we have. And I'm going to share my screen here. If you can see that. Over on the left, you see, so generally it starts out with an RFP, a request for proposals from the town of Nantucket. They have a parcel of land that they put out there, and they say, anyone who wants to develop this parcel, give us a proposal and we'll evaluate it. And so that's generally how we've been awarded all of our properties around the island, through that RFP process. So the town gives us land for $1 basically, and then next the Affordable Housing Trust and the town provide construction loans to us. So that's number 2. Going to Housing Nantucket's the center here. We're the nonprofit developer. We've got also grants that come to us through the Affordable Housing Trust, and that's the taxpayer dollars that are allocated at town meeting that the Affordable Housing Trust can then they make the decisions on how that money's spent. Then oftentimes we'll go to the bank, so Cape Cod 5 or Nantucket Bank, they're our local community partners. They'll provide us funding that we'll then have to pay back, loans, to develop our housing. And then 5 is grants and donations from our donors. So that's through the community investment tax credits. We're a 501c3 organization. So there's not only the federal contribution, you get a charitable write-off for gifts to our organization, but then you also get that state tax credit of up to 50% of the gift as well. So then we hire a builder, so that's number 6 here, to build the property. And in this case, it's Wiggles Way. So the builder, we pay the builder, and that's another kind of asset that Housing Nantucket brings to the table as a partner, because we aren't the municipality, so we don't need to go through all the red tape that's involved in the prevailing wage and 30B and putting out procurement and all that stuff that really increases costs about 30% to the municipality for the development. So we can avoid that because we're private. And then it's a cheaper product that gets built for the community. But, of course, it's a very fine product. So we also retain ownership of the in this case the Wiggles Way and all the other rental units that we produce, and then we manage them ourselves, and then once the rents start coming in, then we can pay back the loans to the Affordable Housing Trust, loans to the bank, and then ultimately what we do is we have a revolving fund where we're lending ourselves money, and then we're able to use those funds, the donor acquired funds, to do other projects, other development efforts. So that's our model here. And let's see, where else? Well, again, Dylan, you did such a great job there describing everything. But yeah, so we think our type of housing is really beneficial because, employer provided housing is one way that our year-round workforce gets their, housing opportunities. But by removing the employer-employee relationship when it comes to housing, then there's less, the employer isn't the landlord. So, it can be a little sticky because sometimes people will stay at a job that isn't really suitable to them because their housing is tied up through the employer. So it gives more freedom for a tenant, a resident, when there's that kind of arm's length and removal of the landlord from, as their employer. So if they switch jobs, the residents don't have to be displaced, and then also it's family housing, so it's not really geared towards an employee. So this Wiggles Way model is a real good demonstration of the partnership. So we have a lot of things on the horizon. We just hired a director of real estate development, which is really increasing our capability. We're a staff of 5 now. And so I'm not going to take up much more time. I know maybe there are other questions, but I just wanted to thank you again. And we've been creating and preserving year-round housing for many, many years. And recently, there is something I should have mentioned, is that question. I forget, maybe it was Gary who asked, like, what number are you solving for? And we did just publish a housing needs assessment. There's a couple different ways that this question can be answered. And one of the ways is to say, well, what would it take to relieve cost burden for our community? And if that's the approach, then it would be between 590 and 765 units. If you say, what if we were to match? We've seen a lot of a loss of rental housing on the island. So what if we were to match statewide levels of owner occupancy? And in that case, then we'd have to create about a little over 1,000 units. So that gives you kind of just a range. If we were to solve our housing crisis today, it would probably take about, let's say 800 to 1,000 units that to really fully address the problem. So I hate to cram everything into just a couple minutes, but that's where we're at. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, we send around monthly newsletters about basically through blog posts and really trying to keep abreast of all the current happenings that across the island. So I do hope to hear from you, from some of you, and I assume Jean or someone will be sending around our contact information. But housingnantucket.org is our website, and I hope that you check it out. That Room for Us film is available to stream there, as well as the full housing needs assessment and all sorts of other great resources. So thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Okay. So Jean, where are we?
That's a good question. I mean, my feeling is that the community that we represent has lots of connections into the State House in Massachusetts, in Boston, and we ought to try to figure out a way to have our community take advantage, just as I did with talking to my state rep and getting him to agree to support the transfer fee. Because I think that's the main issue that, based on what Dylan and Sully said, is the main issue where we could have an impact, and the main issue that the Affordable Housing Trust is attempting to solve. I don't know how we get there. Do we write a letter to the editor and the Inky and the Current, and because I'm sure a lot of our community subscribe to both of those news sources.
Peter, I have one thought.
I think you put your finger on one of to me, there are two big issues. What is it? What policy is it that we want to support? And two, how do we go about publicizing that?
Peter?
And you don't need to get to two until we have one in Chan. Gary.
Peter, I think that our committee would certainly not object to, or we would be in favor of sending a letter in to the appropriate representatives in Boston who are looking at this now. Dylan can indicate, what the letter has to say, that, we favor this community thing approach in order to get that, that special tax approved. And so we should do a motion now saying we agree to send a letter to the appropriate people in the State House in support of this. And once we do that, then Steve Perlman can send a letter to the Current saying, this is what the Advisory Committee for Non-Voting Taxpayers has done. We encourage all of you out there, especially Massachusetts residents, to do the same. What do you think about that?
Well, that sounds like an appropriate pathway. And I think that's the well-tread path. I think that what we typically do is to give our views to the select board on these issues, and then to publicize what those views are, because we are a creature of the select board and supposed to provide our advice. Our legislative reason for being is to provide advice on matters of concern to non-resident taxpayers. And I think this obviously is a matter of concern to non-resident taxpayers. And so the question I think that this group will need to think about and come to grips with is the standard question of are we recommending that taxes be increased for a specific purpose? And I think that's what this boils down to. In the past, I think, while we've never really addressed this in these sort of stark terms, the discussion in the past has always been one that has really, I think, started to get traction, but has never had full traction. And that is, this transfer fee concept is a great concept, but it would be better to, in as much as it appears there's some developing consensus that the land bank's acquisition days are either over or numbered, and therefore it does not need a 2% transfer fee, and that and therefore to fund the housing situation on Nantucket, it would be wise to take down the land bank transfer fee and whatever that amount is, to put it into this new housing vehicle or something like it. And so I think that's kind of where this group, instead of just saying, oh, more taxes, might want to have a more nuanced approach. That's my own thought on this.
If I might, Mr. Chair, do you mind if I just add something?
Sure.
I just so I it can get into semantics of like what's a tax and what's a fee. We definitely do not use the language of a tax when talking about a transfer fee, just because I think tax implies to
You want to
people
call
that
it a tariff? Why don't we just
yeah, let's call it tariff. Just because it implies to people that it might be a recurring tax that they're paying, and it is just the one-time fee on the transaction. So is it technically a tax? Sure, but just we want to make sure that people aren't getting the misunderstanding that it's something they'd have to pay every year. And I have family visiting, so I'm unfortunately gonna have to jump. But I think just in terms, if I could make a recommendation, I think approving the letter to submit to the Joint Committee on Housing pending your review from the advisory committee would be our recommendation. I have the language which I can send to you for you to review and look at. And then I would just like to say for individuals on this call, if you want to get in touch with me, for reaching out to your Massachusetts non-Nantucket representatives to submit an individual letter in your individual capacity, I'd be happy to help you facilitate that as well.
Peter.
Peter Kahn.
Yeah, it's but these are all good ideas, but I suggest that we take the next, we're coming up against a noon deadline here. That we take the next meeting, or at least a portion of the next meeting, to discuss all these things. I think it would be great to have this draft letter in front of us at that time. But as you say, then there are various other implications as to what we're doing here. It's not just simply saying, okay, great, let's just throw this letter out there. We ought to just talk about it a bit. And I don't think we're up against a deadline necessarily, but maybe by the time we come out of that next meeting, which is in early December, we'll have something that we can go forward with. But I think it needs to, sort of consideration here is and an opportunity to digest what the material that's been given to us today.
Yeah. Gene?
Well, I agree with Peter. I was going to comment on your thought, Peter Halley, about taking from the land bank, and think that might not be a very good idea, but we can talk about that at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have agreed with you, Gene, that it's not a very good idea, but it is an idea.
So, Mr. Chair, if I might also just add, the letter. So the letter for the Joint Committee on Housing, which is due in early December, around I think December 3rd or December 5th, would just be for the seasonal communities transfer fee bill. I think that any discussion you guys wanted to have about a broader letter or outreach around the transfer fee and how that should be structured, I think would be a separate discussion, would be my recommendation. Right, like the letter going to the Joint Committee on Housing would be about the seasonal communities bill itself, which is already a piece of legislation. But obviously I defer to you all there. Just want to provide a little clarity.
That's Dylan. I think that's an important point, because I must say I'm still, there's so much information that we've received today, and my only homework was to look at the documentary, which was, I'm off the island. Even seeing the island in winter and in gray tones was very, very fulfilling. But that's just to say that I personally don't have enough understanding at this moment in time to agree to do anything other than to look at this very carefully and in some time appropriate manner. Either, we could meet before our next meeting if there were a time sensitive thing to look at this, or what have you, or give.
I think the other option would be for folks to submit letters in their individual capacity as non-voting taxpayers, and not feel, so if anybody's moved to do that, they can, my email's in the slide deck, and I'll make sure to send around my information. But that might be a way to kind of move a little quicker and not,
If you
not
could
force
send
things.
to Kathy, what it is that ideally you'd like us to say and put it in the context. I'm not asking for, a white paper, but in context of where this goes, the seasonal communities issue.
Sure.
And then Kathy can circulate this to the rest of the group, and we can all get up to speed.
And
Absolutely.
clarify the
And,
timing, and you might clarify the timing, Dylan, as well. Just
yeah, absolutely. It's all very sort of archaic, like house,
It's so
Senate
complicated.
rules, reporting rules. Yeah.
I think we have.
I'd be more than happy to do that. And sorry that I have to run. I want to thank you all. I know I took up the bulk of the time. So thank you all for listening to me talk. It's really great to be here with you all, and I really appreciate Gene and Steve getting me in front of you all, and I look forward to continued partnership with everyone. So talk to you soon.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
service.
Dylan. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we want to sort of wind up is everybody comfortable now with getting further information before jumping into the fire here?
I'm not comfortable, but I guess, if to me, it's a no-brainer. I've been sending letters to the state legislators for the last 5 years on this transfer fee, but if nobody else wants to do it, I just hate to waste a month, and maybe by the time our next meeting is, it'll be too late to make it.
Nothing stopping the individuals from writing it, Gary, but I think as a group, I'd like to see some more. I'd like to think this thing through as to how it's going to affect us.
Yeah, and okay, so Gene and Steve, thank you very much for organizing this and getting it together. And I found it to be very, very educational. It's something, as I said before, it just want to know the time, and now somebody's told me how to build this thing, and I don't understand how to build it. But it's a problem. Apparently, there's a solution out there, and I'm glad we have professionals like Dylan and Sully and Ann involved in doing these things. Okay. So Kathy will hopefully get information and circulate it to everybody, and then we'll figure out how to tee this up in either a time appropriate way. And in the meantime, as Peter and Gary say, anybody who has personal desire to communicate further with others on this and tell them what their opinions are as to what they want to do, are free to do that. So that's good. So let's see, I think everybody knows about the town meeting outcome. In a way, it's such a relief. It's a relief that this is now seemingly behind us, this meaning the STR issue. But I have a feeling that it's going to come back that some regulations may be proposed at the next annual town meeting in May. But I have no information. Kathy, do you have any?
Well, the town is not going to submit anything. They're happy with just letting it go, and heard that people are not planning, but the deadline for citizen articles is Monday for town meeting. So we'll know within the next couple of days whether there are any. I'm not hearing that there will be. So maybe it'll just wait a while and see what happens.
I mean, that's the whole idea. I mean, hopefully people will give this a year now or whatever to see how it shakes out. And then if further regulation, I mean, there is obviously regulation on the books, but if further regulation is needed, then the next town meeting and thereafter there'll be a citizen warrant. But hopefully this will quiet things down a bit. Although I must say, I mean, who knows? Act Now could well file a lawsuit based on what the decision was. So we'll see.
Donna's hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was impressed with the number of people involved. It's when there's an issue that is this important, finally, a group got together. And I mean, what was it, 1,000 votes?
1,500.
1,500 votes. So I was just very impressed with the response.
Took
I think
5
that's-
years, and we came ultimately.
Yes,
came
but
circle.
finally it coalesced, which is great.
And it was interesting too, just on another note, so the non-voting taxpayers were in the middle school gym because the two other rooms were completely full. And there were probably maybe 50 non-voting taxpayers in there. And we could watch, but we couldn't speak, which was fine. And there were a number of high school students there, which I thought was great. So they were there participating and learning about the legislative process, and I thought that was really good to see.
Yeah, I think as you, for those who watched what we decided to do is to ask a recently arrived non-voting taxpayers to say our piece for us. Ed Sanford, who, as you may know, is a longtime resident of Nantucket and is now a non-resident. And he had spoken in his personal capacity at a couple of the board meetings, and I thought that he had an approach that was very similar to us, and that he was also a person that people trusted and had a reasonable and good presentation. And so he said the piece on our behalf, and while that was only one small part of the puzzle, I think Donna, in response to your observation that when there were a lot of people there, and there certainly were more than I've ever seen at a town meeting, I can only think of the wisdom of our member Gary Beller, who, in discussing what people are doing about climate change, says that taught us that people will only start doing things when they feel the water lapping at their ankles. And I think this was a matter where this issue of really was whether or not the major part of Nantucket's tourist beds are going to be supplied by short-term rentals or not, lapped at a lot of people's ankles, as we thought it would, and people got out and voted, and so.
Well, to underscore that, Peter,
Meeting.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, the Chamber of Commerce obviously came out, and I think that was the first time as a group that they did it in 5 years, which is really quite remarkable that it took them that long to figure it out. But that made a huge difference in the turnout.
Yeah, that made a huge difference. I think the Brian Tibbetts analysis made a huge difference.
Yep.
And the hugest difference probably is Mr. Borgeson's deciding to take the matter up and be the spokesperson. And quite frankly, I also think that David Iverson did a great public service by providing an alternative, this became a choice that people could make and resolve, and they did that.
And just two other quick observations. Being there and watching the people come in, the usual crowd showed up early because they opened the doors at 4 o'clock. So people that don't have jobs and are retired and they can be there. And then at right around 5:30, so the meeting was supposed to start at 5, but around 5 and between 5 and 5:30, the line just went out the door through the whole high school, through the middle school, out into the night. It was amazing. And I'm really glad that the moderator did not start the meeting until everybody was in their seats and had their clickers and could participate. So all of the workers showed up. That's when all the people that worked till 5 o'clock and couldn't get there. And then once they got there, all the parking spaces were gone. So they had to park far away and walk. So it was really, when they were all in good spirits for doing that and happy to be there. So that was very different. And I think Brian Borgeson, I agree, did an amazing job. He provided a lot of leadership for anybody who wanted to help him get the word out, get the vote out. And he wanted to keep it simple, which he did. And I think he had an advantage being a local businessman, somebody that everybody knew, somebody who was always at town meeting and speaking up. And he wasn't threatened by anything. He doesn't operate a short-term rental. So he really could speak a lot more freely than people who were worried about getting sued, for example. So I think it just, the town really came out, and it was different this time.
Yeah. It was great to see. It was absolutely great to see. And I think Kathy, in her role as the head of Nantucket Together, also played an important part in all of this, because people
As
had
did
choices
Peter
and they
Kahn.
understood the issues.
Yes.
If I may say, also Peter Kahn and the group that was
Yep.
so involved for years.
Peter and Bill, who went to all those meetings, and this was a real road paving job where you have to build an actual foundation to hold the surface of the road, and it all came together. So thank you all for all those who participated, and it's such a pleasure to be able to move on to other things, which brings me back to the I think there are three things that certainly are on my mind, and the question is what is on everybody else's mind that are looming that could use continued attention and maybe some advocacy. Today's topic is one of them. Our island home is another that is going to come back, and climate change, which brings me to sort of Scott Ulm's point several meetings ago about capital projects. And I think one has to look at all of these issues in terms of, looking forward 10 years, what can the island bear, and how's that going to affect non-voting taxpayers and really people on the island together? And I think we are doing those things. So I guess looking forward to our group, what are our next big? We talked about having a DPW person come speak to us. Who should we be asking now for the next one or two meetings?
I'd suggest, Peter, I'm sorry, I'd suggest Jill Veith of the Finance Committee. I think this whole issue of capital expenditures is something that she's in her committee are going to be responsible for. And it's to me, it's the overriding issue. All these other ones, fit within it, but we've got to the town's got to set some priorities because it can't do it all, at least not with its present tax base. So I would bring Jill in. She's indicated that she a willingness to do so and actually a desire to do so. So I suggest we do that.
I agree.
Should we ask her for December then?
Sure.
And what day are we looking at? December now?
I can't do any of the December, so you'll have to do it, Peter. I'm sure you're up for it. Well, I'll be in Antarctica.
Great.
I don't think they have Wi-Fi down there.
Have fun.
Isn't it summer down there? Is that why you're going?
That's why I'm going.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
I guess that also brings the issue of whether we should meet in December or whether we should meet in January.
Beginning of January works.
January be fine.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll and then a date in January. I know that I'm going to be in Europe probably for 7 to 10 days, starting around the 5th or so of January. So maybe
do we have a schedule for the can we get a schedule so we can get it on so we can lock it in? it mimight be helpful to do that. Maybe we don't need, you know, if you circulate something, I mean, maybe a poll for just to circulate a poll that will to the board, you know, which we can indicate what dates are available each month for us, and then pick a date that works for the most of us.
Is anybody have the capabilities of circulating one of those little polls?
I think I can figure it out. I think I've done it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what are those
poll
what do they
on-
call those monkey things?
So it would be for what Saturdays, but basically people to tell us what Saturdays they have open.
Yeah.
In each month.
As far as they know.
Yeah.
Okay. Through when?
Through when
May?
we come back, yeah, through May, so that we got June. Hopefully, we can start meeting in person in June.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. And so getting back to this one, I guess we'll get this information from Dylan. Kathy will get it, and
Discuss it next week.
we'll try to figure out what to do.
Okay.
A motion for adjournment in order?
Excuse me?
I say, is it a motion to adjourn in order?
Yeah, that's the next question.
So moved.
The PR committee, I guess we have PR committee, and the PR committee is doing its usual good job.
The PR committee would like to be in the early part of the agenda for the next meeting. 'Cause we have had, we had a very good meeting this past week. And we would like to sort of share with the group what our thoughts are, get some additional feedback. So, so anyway, I would just like to be hopefully the first item. And I promise only to take 12 minutes, no more than 12 minutes.
Okay, so and is there is there kind of like a penalty if you go over? Or
I think Kathy should just stop the mic from that, turn off the sound.
Okay, so maybe we will start out with the PR, because actually the PR committee has some vibrant and good ideas that probably should be ventilated and discussed.
27 people on today, so that was a good turnout. And one other thing that was just kind of fun, one of the persons that did sign on had thought I did a really good job in responding to them about a question they had, and wanted to make sure that in my performance review I would get a good recommendation.
We'll give it to you.
So I'm hoping for a good raise. Thank you.
So is there any public comment? Does this individual want to, publicly praise you?
I think they're all gone.
Okay. Well, in that case, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Oh, well, in favor, yes.
Unanimous.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Happy
Bye-bye.
Thanksgiving.
Yes,
Thank you.
Remember to turn the
Thanksgiving.
recording off.
Okay, recording is off.
Thank you.
Okay.